stream tonight as we talk about unraveling the art of cybersecurity. So the way this is going to work tonight is we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to introduce ourselves, let you know who we are. We're going to give you a quick demonstration of how to do some basic ethical hacking, starting with some reconnaissance and vulnerability scans, moving into an attack to gain access to a system. And then at that point, we're going to allow you to ask any questions you have, either about pen testing, careers, certifications, whatever it is, so you can get answers directly from me and Jamario. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Jason Dion. I am the lead instructor here at Dion Training, and I've been in the cybersecurity industry for about 25 years or so, doing everything from starting out in the help desk, moving my way up, all the way to IT director, SOC director, and jobs like that. And then I went off and started my own company, which is Dion Training. And one of my other instructors is Jamario, who's here with me today. So Jamario, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Well, I'm Jamario Kelly, and I am an instructor here at Dion Training. I get to work with Jason's pretty face. It's great. Most of my experience comes from my 12 years in the Air Force. I spent a lot of time being a cyber transport, so pretty much creating and setting up computer networks. And once I was able to first get into that career field, I had to take Security Plus, and it really piqued my interest, learning how to secure networks and how in depth it was. Because I'm very inquisitive, so that really piqued my interest. And so from that standpoint, I got very serious about security, and so I got my CISP. That's just my own personal passion, and I've done a lot of work as well with the government, a lot of policy management from this standpoint, and been around penetration testing. I've never personally had to do a lot myself, but as I've definitely played around with it a lot. And it's very interesting how in depth it goes, and it's constantly evolving. And especially with the new advent of AI, it's definitely going to be shaping a lot more differently in the future. And I'm definitely want to see how it turns out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and so as we go through, for the first 10 minutes or so, we're going to be doing the demonstration. So as we're doing that, if you have any questions, throw them into chat. I have Christina here in the room with me as well. She's our social media manager. She's marking those as favorites. I already saw a couple of questions in, like Zahara had asked about Security Plus and CC and getting a job. So we favorited that. And as soon as we're done with the demo, we'll start answering all those questions. So anything you have, feel free to throw them in the chat. Go ahead and give us, thumbs up, thumbs down as you're hearing things that you like or don't like, and we'll go from there. So with that being said, I'm going to go over and push us over into our demo environment, and Jamario is going to walk us through a quick demonstration for about 10 minutes, and then we'll talk our way through it. All right, here we go.
We're going to walk through a basic demonstration of a penetration test. We're going to be attacking a virtual machine from the tryhackme.com website, which offers vulnerable VMs for practitioners to sharpen their skills and really put theory into practice. In a traditional penetration test, there are 5 general phases. We're thinking about reconnaissance, scanning, vulnerability assessment, exploitation, and reporting. But in this demo, we're only going to focus on the scanning, vulnerability assessment, and exploitation phases. So the fun part. We're going to be exploiting an old vulnerability known as Eternal Blue. Now, here's a little background about it. Eternal Blue is a cyber attack exploit developed by the U.S. National Security Agency, or NSA. It leverages a vulnerability in Microsoft's implementation of the server messaging block protocol to gain unauthorized access and control of computers running certain versions of Microsoft Windows. Now, the tools we're going to use in this test will be Nmap and Metasploit from the Kali Linux platform as you see here. Now, you can think of Nmap kind of like a treasure map of the internet or computer networks. It helps you find computers and services like websites and email systems on that network. It can help you find out what's on the network, whether it's one computer or thousands, and you can see the services running and the ports that will be open. Metasploit is kind of like a toolbox for testing computer system security. They can check to see if the system has any weak spots, aka vulnerabilities, and even simulate attacks to see if the system is secure. And again, it's mostly used for people who really want to secure the systems or penetration testers as ourselves. Okay, enough of that. That's a quick overview. Now let's get started. Okay, so let's go to our terminal here. And now let's break down the Nmap command that we're going to use. Now, the first thing we want to do is just type in the Nmap command by itself to see the available options. Okay, so when you do this, of course, you can see all the available options to make it more specific to what you're looking for. Okay, so that's just something really quick to keep in mind. All right, so let's clear this. Now, what we're going to use is the SV option and the SC option. Okay, so we're going to start off with a command like this. Map SV, C. I'm going to use a script for vulnerabilities. I'll use a 10. Okay, so let's just break down this command. So of course we have the Nmap command, which starts the actual Nmap scanner, and the SB option. Now this switch is used to detect the version. It allows Nmap to determine what version of a service is running on a specific port. And this information can be useful for identifying potential vulnerabilities and specific versions of services. Because when it comes to vulnerability assessments, everything really is relative to the version of the software that's running. Okay, now the SC option, that's just a shorthand for script equals default, meaning that the scripts that we're going to be running is going to be the default ones that's associated with Nmap. And so we're going to be running the vulnerability script on 10.10.1996, which is our target machine. Okay, let's press this and give a little time to go through. Okay, so let's break this down really quick. Let's scroll up to the top. All right, now one thing to really focus on is the ports, the state, and the service that's running. Now you can see here, Nmap displays things in a particular format. So of course we see the port, and we're going to be using the TCP protocol. The state open, meaning that it's accepting requests. And then we see it has a host of different services that's running. So let's look up some of the important parts. So the host is up, meaning that it's powered on, accepting requests. Now let's reference to the port state, and we're going to identify what the states mean. So they're going to typically be in three positions, either open, closed, or filtered. Now, the open state means that the application on the target machine is listening for connections, packets on that port. In other words, the service is ready to accept TCP connections or UDP packets. If any port is open, it could potentially be a point of vulnerability if the server is running on it has a security weakness. Now, just think of an open port as a window to a house. That's a possible way for an intruder to get into the window. Now, if the port is closed, like the other state it can be in, this state indicates that no application is listening on this port. Now, how the system identifies this is because a closed port responds to Nmap's Pro packet with a TCP reset packet or an ICMP type 3 code 3 message for UDP. Now, this informs the scan that there's no service listening. While closed ports are not generally useful for attacks in and of itself, they can help an attacker understand what services a host does not offer. Now, if you were using Wireshark or something like that, you will be able to see this in real time. And again, that's how the system understands if the port is open or closed, by the response that the system gives, and this is all standard responses based off RFC protocols. Now, a filter state means that the pro packet sent by Nmap to the port was dropped by some type of filtering system, typically a firewall, packet filtering, router, or intrusion prevention system. Nmap cannot determine whether the port is open because the packet just doesn't make it to the destination. Filter ports make it a little bit more challenging for attackers to gain information about the target, as they cannot conclusively determine the state of the port. Because if you had the correct IP address, you would be able to access that particular port. But given that you do not have the correct source IP address, you will never know. Now, on this example, it's not going to actually show the different ports because it's only going to show the ones that are open. If you were to do a traditional Nmap scan and you wanted to see all of them, whether they're open or closed or filtered, the system could do that for you. Okay, let's kind of scroll down here. Now we see it's vulnerable to multiple types of attacks. Okay, and this is very useful because remember earlier I described that we're going to go through the scanning and vulnerability assessment. One good thing about Nmap is it combines them into one. So we scan the system and we also get a vulnerability assessment as well. One thing to note, many systems are vulnerable to many different things, but not all offer the benefits that you would need. Now we're going to focus on one particular vulnerability, and that's going to be here, the Samba vulnerability MS17-010. So what we're going to do is use the MS17-010, and we're going to search that in our Metasploit framework database, and it's going to offer up already pre-crafted payloads that will exploit that vulnerability. Okay, let's do that next. I like to keep things nice and neat, so I'm going to open up another terminal. Just going to minimize this. Now to start the Metasploit framework, we're going to type in the MSF console. Okay, we're good to go. Now what we're going to be attempting to do is something called a TCP Reverse Shell. Now that's a type of shell where the target machine communicates back to the attacking machine. Now the attacking machine has a listening port on which it receives the connection. By using this approach, it can bypass the firewall restrictions on the target machine. Now let me show you really quick. Now again, this MS17-010, that is the security patch update that you're supposed to apply to your Windows machine to make it less vulnerable. So again, there's multiple ways to search these things. So again, if we wanted to, we could have searched for the actual exploit, which is Eternal Blue. Oops. And we see we get the same thing, right? So we're going to focus on the Eternal Blue portion of it, and we're going to use that payload. It's going to be 0. And we're going to show the options, right? Let's look at how it's configured. Now, what I was speaking about earlier is with this TCP reverse shell, if you look at the payload options towards the bottom half, you'll see the local host. Now, that's something that needs to be configured. Because when you're using a VPN, your local host is going to be different from the one that's currently set. So we're going to set that really quick. Set. All right. Next, we want to set our host, which is going to be the remote host. So it's going to be 10.10.19.96. Perfect. When we're looking at the local host, that's going to be the listening port that this TCP Reverse Shell is going to be listening on. So we're going to try to exploit this particular vulnerability, and we're going to open a shell or pretty much a command prompt on that machine and send it out back to us, because typically when you're looking at firewalls, it's easier to have the machine that's internal, which is considered safe, connect an outbound connection versus an external, which is not safe, establish an inbound connection to a shell. So that's where we're going to use a TCP reverse shell. All right. So it seems like we have everything configured. We can show the options again to make sure it's still good. Okay. Now, I'm just going to run this. Typically, when you see it says Meterpreter all the way to the left, that means we have established this remote shell. So we can look at ifconfig command. And you see here, when we see the interface 14, see the IPv4 address 10.10.19.96, that means that we're in. Okay. Now, again, there's multiple things you can do after this portion of the attack, but it's going to get very in-depth. So I just wanted to show you the beginning from scanning, identifying the vulnerability, and then exploiting it using Metasploit by adding a payload and getting a reverse TCP shell. And now from this point, an attacker can do whatever nefarious purposes that they're looking for. They could install a rootkit, they could perform a hash dump and steal passwords. Now, again, with a traditional penetration test, that's where we're going to do all the reporting. Now, I hope this short demonstration has been insightful for you, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hey everybody! All right, we're back.
All
So
right,
we got
we're back.
Jamario and me here. So as we were going through that, we went through it pretty quickly, and I know that was a 8 to 9 minute demonstration, and we went through a lot of stuff there. We went through Nmap, which is how you scan and find things. Then you can use a vulnerability assessment tool, which Nmap has some of that in it, which is what Jamario was using, or you can use a separate one like Greenborn, OpenVAS, Alien Vault, whichever one you prefer, or Nessus, whatever. And once you find that vulnerability, which in this case was a missing Windows patch in the case of the Eternal Blue exploit, you can then attack that machine, which is what Mario did there by setting up and using Metasploit as the way to attack that machine and gain access. Once you have access with Meterpreter, like he did where we ended the demo there, we could do things like installing keyloggers, looking at the webcam and taking pictures of the desktop. We can do things like dumping the hash value so we could steal the passwords from that machine, and lots of other things. But that's the initial access vector. And that's what it looks like to be a pen tester in the real world. You scan for vulnerabilities, find those vulnerabilities, see if you can break into them, and then you'd report that back to the organization that you're testing and say, look, I found a way in. This machine located at .96 is vulnerable to this exploit, and this exploit's been out since 2017. So in this case, you really need to fix that machine right away. But that's really what we do is we're always looking, the different vulnerabilities are what change, but the process is pretty much the same all the time as you keep going through. It's just finding that vulnerability, finding that missing patch. And that's why patching is so important on your machines. And anytime you see that you are missing a patch, you are vulnerable. So with that said, we're going to move into our Q&A portion. So any questions you have, we're here to answer. I did see that we already have about 5 or 10 different questions that Christina has had. So she's going to pop them up on the screen. I'm going to read them. I'll let Jamario take first stab, and then I'll comment anything I want to add. Or if it's one that he's not comfortable answering, he can just tell me to pass, and I'll take it from there. So let's go with the first one here. All right, our first question is from, looks like Zara. Hello, Jason. I got my Security Plus and CC from ISC Squared, but I can't find a job. Any tips? So for those who aren't aware, CC is certified in cyber. It's the lowest level IT certification right now. It's by IC Squared, who does SSCP, CCSP, and CISSP, which is kind of the granddaddy of all the certifications in IT. And once you get CISSP, you're kind of at the top level. And CC is one they introduced last year, last fall to winter, that was basically very, very introductory. It's just like a small sliver of what's in Security Plus. And then the next step up from that is Security Plus. And then there's further steps from there. So just to give context of where we are. So Jamario, knowing that they have their CC and then they moved on to Security Plus, what do you think is holding them back from finding a job? And what kind of tips do you have to help them break through?
Well, again, it's very difficult, as you mentioned in the last stream, because in that smaller, and the entry level is very saturated. right? Because everyone kind of getting Security Plus, especially if you think about people getting out the military, right? Everyone comes standard edition, at least in the comm world, with Security Plus. And I believe
Yep.
last time, you spoke a lot about one good thing is try to get internships, right? Or try to get a lower level position, because I think a lot of times it's not necessarily can't find a job, but it's maybe finding a job suitable to the pay that you would prefer. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And the truth is, experience is very more valuable to a certain degree than a certification, right? Can you really do the job? And it's really hard, right? Everyone has that same problem. It doesn't have to do anything with Security Plus or IT. It can be in biology. It can be whatever career field. But it's always the question of, I have the degree, but they require the experience. How do I get the experience if they don't give me the job, right? So it's always a good question. But we know Jason has a better answer for this one because he's a hiring manager and he's done that a lot.
Yep.
But I know for sure internships and working for free is always going to be something that goes a long way. But I think you can give probably a better answer than that.
Yeah, I think that's both are really good suggestions. And the ones I give all the time is, internships or working for a charitable organization like your local, church, synagogue, mosque, whatever. They all have IT networks. They need help. And if you've got the skills, a lot of times they'll let you work on there, and that can start your counter for experience. The other thing is, in your post or your question here, you didn't specify a lot about yourself. So I don't know what region of the world you're in, because that does matter. Which state you're in, which country you're in, what the job market looks like. For instance, I am here in Florida, Jamario is in California, and the job market in both those locations do look differently these days, where there is more hiring or less in one of the other places. And some employers look for certain things that others don't. For instance, a lot of employers look for Security Plus. There's a few out there that actually don't like Security Plus, and they want you to have your SSCP, which is the Security Plus equivalent from IC squared. But that is a much, much smaller number. So knowing which job you're targeting and what they're asking for is important. When you're looking for jobs, I like to look on places like LinkedIn, Monster, Dice, etc. That will give you a good idea of what hiring managers are asking for in terms of years of experience, previous positional experience, technical skills, because they'll even say must have experience with Windows 10, must have experience with OpenVAS, must have experience with Metasploit as a penetration tester or whatever it is. And knowing that and making sure your resume is hitting those keywords is going to be important, as long as you have the experience to back it up. The other thing is, I always talk about the three-legged stool. And so when I bring up the three-legged stool, this is experience, certifications, and degrees. And each of those three things are important to some degree in you getting a job. You've got the certification, right? Which in this case is Security Plus, which is the entry-level foundational certification that I tell everybody to get to be able to be hireable. But it doesn't mean you're going to be guaranteed a job just because you got your Security Plus. The Security Plus on your resume is going to help you get through the hiring filters so that a human actually will look at it. Because if Jason and Jamario were both applying for the job, and Jason has Security Plus and Jamario has 2 years of experience, Jason's is actually going to get in front of a person because it matches one of the keywords in the job description, and Jamario, even with the experience, won't. So certifications are important in the hiring process to be seen, but it's not going to get you a job. It's going to get you an interview. Okay. Now, once you get to the interview, that's where your experience comes in. That's where your social skills come in. That's where people like you and will give you a job offer. So those are some of the things I would think about and look at. Obviously on this live stream, we don't have enough time to go into all the depths of the hiring process. If you go to diontraining.com/Udemy, you'll see there's one of our courses there. It's called Irresistible. And this is Irresistible is a course that teaches you how to be irresistible to cybersecurity hiring managers. And we talk about degrees, certifications. We tell you how to write your resume. We tell you how to do your negotiations. We tell you how to do your interviews and all that stuff. It's about a 6-hour course, and it covers all of that. And so that is a great course that I'd recommend you check out. Usually it's on sale for $10, $15, $20 if you use the link at diontraining.com/Udemy. And that'll be able to go into all the depth for you on that. And then the other thing I'd recommend is if you haven't checked out the podcast, yourcyberpath.com. That one is done between Kip Boyle and myself. We co-host that, and it comes out every 2 weeks. And in that, we go through all the stuff about hiring, firing, and all of that, because Kip and I have both been hiring managers for the past 20 to 25 years in this cybersecurity realm. And so we can tell you what we've seen and what thing you need to look out for. So that's a completely free resource. And there's almost 100 episodes right now in our back catalog, and the episodes are 30 to 60 minutes each. And you can find all of them at yourcyberpath.com or your favorite podcast player. And if you want to learn about the different jobs in the cybersecurity workforce to figure out which one's going to be the right one for you, right around episode 33, I think it was, there's a one called All the Jobs in the SOC. And we go around and talk about each and every job. And there's 20 or 30 different cybersecurity jobs. So knowing what job you're going after is also important, because if you're applying for a security engineer job and all you have is your Security Plus, you're probably not going to get a call back because you don't have enough experience or level of knowledge to hit that job. But if you're going for an entry-level SOC analyst, then you're probably at the right level. And it's more an issue of wrong location in the world, or you're not displaying on your resume your actual experience that you have from other jobs or from volunteering or internships, or you don't have the right certifications for that particular position. Because I've seen some companies say, we only accept people with CISSP. And so if that's the case, you're not going to get looked at because you only have a Security Plus at this point. And you can't get a CISSP unless you have 5 years of experience, which really tells you they're looking for somebody with a lot of experience and a way to guarantee that. So hopefully that answers your questions. If not, pop it back in the chat and we'll come back to you again. All right, next question. This one is from Donald. I saw your video on internships. My question is, why in the T doesn't have an apprenticeship program like plumbing or residency in the field like medical? Yeah, this is something that we in the United States really don't do well, to be quite honest. I'm an American. I've lived over here for most of my life. I'm 43 years old, but I have spent several years in Europe, the Middle East, and in Asia during my career. And I will tell you that most other places in the world do a much, much better job with the idea of internships, apprenticeship, and paid internships and paid apprenticeships. There are a lot of those coming in the United States right now for what we call blue collar work, welding, plumbing, electrical. And a lot of that is coming over because the US is starting to realize that what Germany was doing for the last 10 years was really good and really smart. And so we're bringing it here to the US. My son lives in South Carolina. And in his school, they have a partnership where you can go through and become a welder in your last year of high school, and they will actually pay you $20 to $25 an hour while you're going through high school to go work for a welder and learn this skill. And when you graduate high school, you have your apprenticeship done and you're ready to go make $20, $30, $40 an hour as an apprentice welder. And then you can become a master welder and make, $50, $60, $100 an hour as you keep going up. I haven't seen a lot of that in the cybersecurity world yet. And I think a lot of that is because we tend to use places like the military as that, or the government jobs as that. And so you can get a job in the military with zero experience. They'll put you through school. They'll teach you for 4 years how to do your job. You'll get the experience and then you leave. Like Jamario, you did 8 to 12 years, somewhere around there, right around 10 years in the Air Force.
Yeah, I did
And
12
that was,
years. Yeah.
when you joined the Air Force, you didn't have a degree in computer science. You didn't have cyber training, right?
No.
But now you do. And so there's a lot of that goes on, right? Another thing you can do is military reserves. That's another way of doing it. But if you're an older person and you're not medically fit and you can't do it, or you don't want to be in the military, there are a lot less programs. I have a lot of friends with a lot of Fortune 100 companies and Fortune 500 companies, and they are trying to start doing more of these internship programs because there's such a fight over qualified, experienced people at the middle and high levels of cybersecurity. But there's a glut of people who just have Security Plus, right? Or just have, SSCP or COISA, but they have no experience, and nobody's willing to give them a chance because they don't have experience. And so internships is very important. I agree. Finding them can be difficult. There are a lot of unpaid internships. There are some paid internships, and then there are some paid entry-level programs where they start you out very low with the expectation that hopefully you'll go higher later. I can tell you when I graduated with my master's degree, I got a letter because I graduated, with a B or above average. So I got a letter from the National Security Agency saying, hey, we're interested in you coming to work for us. We'll make you a GS9 and you can come in here and work for us and get the experience so you can now become a cybersecurity expert, right? At that point, I already was a cybersecurity expert and I was getting the master's to up my pay. So I didn't take that job offer because, for those who don't know, a GS9 is roughly around $60,000 or $70,000 a year, which is a really low salary for somebody with a master's degree, right? But that's kind of their standard offer that they did for people coming out with a master's degree that graduate with a certain degree at a certain level of grade. And so they do it. So the answer to your question, Donald, is I don't know why we in the US haven't embraced this yet, but I think a lot of it just goes to the corporate culture where we like to rent our employees as opposed to buying them. If you think back to the 50s and 60s, my grandpa, when he got a job, his whole life, he had 3 jobs, right? He worked for one company for 30 years, worked for another one for 10 or 15 years, and then worked for another one for a couple of years and retired. That was the traditional way of doing things. We don't do that these days, right? As an employer, I'm Jamario's boss. I hired him. He works for me. I run my company a little differently. I don't like to turn over my employees. So I tend to hire and keep people for a long time. In fact, I've never had somebody quit on me in the 7 years I've run Dion Training. We've only had a handful of people who don't work here anymore, and there was 3 or 4 that left because we outgrew them and their skill set, and we had to go to other areas. But in general, what I see in the corporate America scape right now is I'm going to grab somebody like Jamario. He'll work for me for 12, 24, maybe 36 months, and then he's going to go somewhere else for more money. And so why should I invest in Jamario when he's going to be running away anyway? And that's kind of the typical thing. And I think that's why you don't see a lot of these paid internships, because let's say Dion Training set up our own SOC and we started doing SOC as a service, and I started hiring all my students in, right? And I'm paying you 20, 30, $40 an hour as a SOC analyst, giving you all this skill. And then you get enough skill after 6 months, you go work for Lockheed Martin or General Dynamics, and they're going to pay you 3 times what I can afford. And so I'm constantly losing you. So it doesn't really benefit me to do that as an employer. And that's why I think you're seeing a lot of employers not doing that, because they're so afraid of people just getting skilled and leaving. And that's what ends up happening quite a bit. I know I said I was going to let Jamario answer first, and I took that one over. Do you have anything to add, Jamario, on that one?
No, again, I think when it comes to the career, I mean, you really got it. I'm mostly the employee, not the employer side. I can only really speak on like the positions that I've held, but for sure, I mean, I definitely make a lot of sense with not wanting to invest, because if you look at almost any type of career advice you see today, especially on YouTube, they're telling you, hey, go to this job, and if you move every 2, 3 years, you can get like a 15, 20% bump in pay, right? And I think it was Warren Buffett said from an investing standpoint, though, it's like you give me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome, and you incentivize people to move. That's what they're going to do. So yeah, it's definitely hard. I believe it, and I guess it's harder for me because I can't really see it, because I came out the military. When the military, you guarantee the job, and when I'm on LinkedIn, I'm constantly getting hit up by recruiters for job positions, SOC positions, etc., because I'm hitting those marks with this many years. And they already know 6 feet equals so many years, right? Because of what it takes to get it. So that's already a filtering mechanism for experience. So, I mean, it's definitely insightful to see all these questions, because it is hard for me to understand how hard it is to get, because I'm turning jobs down, So
And
it's
that's
tough.
the thing, right? Like, I have the same problem, Jamario. I get emailed every day. Would you like to interview for this job for a CTO role? Would you like a job for a CSO role? Would you like a job for this, or IT director or SOC director or whatever? And the answer is no. I have my company. I'm happy doing what I do, right? That's why I'm doing this. But even when internships, we do a lot of internships at Dion Training. But specifically where we're doing our internships through is the military. And the reason for that is, as instructors, I need people who have experience in the real world doing cybersecurity. So somebody like Jamario, who has 8 to 10 years of experience running large Air Force networks, is valuable to me as an instructor. But the problem is he's also valuable to everybody who wants people to run large scale networks, right? And I can tell you, I can't afford to pay him the same as Lockheed Martin. They're a much bigger company. They've got a much bigger funded. And so Jamario actually is losing money by working for me, but we try to make it up for him in the fact that he can make his own hours. He's got more flexibility. He can work from home and all those other benefits. But that being said, we do hire a lot of interns through the DoD Skill Bridge program, which is the last 6 months that somebody's on active duty as an enlisted or officer. They can work for a civilian company to get that experience in the civilian world, so they're ready to go get another job. And for us, we've had 4 so far who have come through the Skill Bridge program, and all 4 we've actually offered jobs to, and they all selected to stay with us at Dion Training. But had they not, they could have gone someplace else and probably made more money doing this IT stuff, because the other companies can pay more. And so it doesn't always come down to money, but it does come down to experience. And internships are a hard one. And it really does depend where you are and where you live. The other thing I would say about internships is very few internships are online. So most of them you are going to have to do in person. And the reason for that is that's where you're going to get most of your skill, being hand to hand, side by side. As I'm working on something, you're looking over my shoulder and learning. Our company, we're all remote, so we don't do a lot of internships in person, and that is a struggle. The other thing that we are doing for internships to try to break down some of this is we do high school and college internships over the summer. They're not really well paid. I mean, they're well paid for high schoolers, but I mean, it's $15 an hour, right? For most of you listening in the States, $15 an hour is kind of minimum wage. But instead of them working at McDonald's over the summer, they're working for us, making the same they would make at McDonald's, and they're getting skills they can use as they go into college and beyond. So that's why we do it. And so hopefully you can find something like that near you. All right. Rishab. Rishab says, as somebody who wants to end up being a security architect, currently working as a security and network engineer on Fortinet next generation firewalls, would you suggest moving to SOC or pen testing? Jamar, I'll let you go first.
All right, so security architect, security. Well, for me, I think it's all about kind of passion, right? SOC is going to be more on the defensive end, penetration testing more on the offensive end, right? I'm explosive. I like offensive things. When I watch basketball, I like to see them score. When I watch football, I like to see them, win. So I think really it's going to go into passion. I don't really know the numbers from the standpoint of if you're looking for money, if you're looking for, sense of fulfillment. But I believe penetration testing would offer me personally the most sense of fulfillment because again, I love complex things, and it's such a wide so many tools you listed earlier. Like I don't even know all the tools. I just kind of focus on the ones that I know and kind of go in depth because there's so many ways to skin a cat, right? So me personally, if you like penetration testing, I would go for that. I personally love it, and because there's so many different other opportunities as well with it. Because I know a lot of companies today, they're doing the bug bounties, so they're just kind of like setting up their networks to be perfectly attacked. And so maybe you instead of fully transitioning over, maybe you can try with the bug bounty, see how you do well with that, see if you really enjoy it and get a good experience because you get the report to the companies after you find a particular bug, etc. So it really depends on if you want to be on the defensive end or the offensive end. Me personally, I like offense. I like to score. I like to win. I like to go through. And then, it's kind of like the bad guy kind of scenario, but you don't have to go to jail. So that's personally me. I would pick penetration testing, and that's because I have a passion for it. But of course, it's going to come down to passion for you.
Yeah. So, as far as career, I agree. Pen testing is a lot of fun. That being said, I'll give you some from the career side and from a longevity perspective. So, if I was picking and I was more focused on higher salary, longer duration of career, and being able to really have this thing that's going to be my next 5, 10, 15-year career, right? I personally would go to the SOC environment and the cybersecurity defense side of things. Now, the reason I say that is that for every one pen tester job, there are 4 or 5 defense jobs. And so it really just does come down to a numbers, right? We talked earlier about it's really hard to break in entry level. Breaking an entry level in pen testing, nearly impossible. I mean, you'll apply to 1,000 places and maybe one will give you a call back because there are so many people who want to be pen testers. There's a lot less people who are analysts and cybersecurity defenders because they see it as boring, they see it as routine, whatever. But there's also a lot of job security there, right? And you make good money, and you can use that as your stepping stone into pen testing. Because I'll tell you, as somebody who hires for pen testers, I would not be hiring somebody with zero skill. I need somebody who has already been an analyst for 2 or 3 years, who knows what the defense side looks like. And now I can teach them the attack side so they know what the defenders can see. And now they can figure out how to avoid that from being detected. And so it really does take both sides. And the other thing I would say is, the other thing you can look at is a purple team, which is a mix of pen test, red, and defense, blue, together, which gives you purple. And so some places are doing more purple teaming, and that will give you 80% of your time defense and maybe 20% pen testing. And that's a good way to mix it as well. But with your background coming from a firewall area and being a security engineer, I don't think you'd have a hard time getting a job as a SOC analyst and moving into that, and being able to do that for a couple of years. And then if you want to go to pen test, you can. But with your end goal of being a security architect, I think something like CYSA and that cyber defense skill set is going to be much more appropriate for you, with that being your end goal. And it will get you into those higher pay bands than just being a network engineer, because a network engineer tends to kind of top out around 100,000, where cyber defenders tend to top out 150 to 200. Pen testers generally around 100, 125, sometimes up to 150 if you're really good. That's kind of the general numbers I see on the US as an average to help you out. All right, next one. All right. John asks, how do you expect AI to begin affecting policies as it continues to develop in the near future? This is a great question
Oh,
because AI is on
yeah, I love it.
everybody's minds. In fact, what was it, 2 months
Yep.
ago? We did a live stream here on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn on AI, and that was the focus of our
Yeah.
discussion. Like today, our focus was on pen testing. So I know Jamario's got a lot to say about this, so I'm going to let Jamario start, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, one thing I think how we're going to start with everything is going to be a fear based. They've already signed petitions, trying to help slow down the progress of AI. I think Europe, they came out with some policy on banning some portions of AI. I can't remember exactly what it was. I know ChatGPT isn't legal in some parts of the world already. So they're already trying to slow it down because they see the fear. But the problem with any type of technology that accelerates this fast is when you try to slow it down, your competitors are not. They're going to keep putting their foot on the gas, and they're going to pretty much take over to a certain degree. So they've already been starting to talk about this. It's already in Congress. They're already, even you can see the congressman like, what's up with this chat GBT? When they start talking about it, you understand policy going to come through. But the problem I see is kind of hard because a lot of these at least members that I've seen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, they're not really techie people, right? They don't even understand what's going on, how to use the technology, so they can't really understand the implementation. Now, of course, they should have people on their staff to inform them properly, but we know when it comes to politics, it's really about public opinion, right? And I think a lot of sentiment now is always going to be job security, right? So the first thing is, kind of economic conditions are the most important things. So I think it's going to be mostly focused on job security. And if it comes to at the cost of replacing a lot of jobs, if the pie isn't getting bigger, I can see a lot of policies slowing this technology down when it comes to cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, generative AI in general, because again, it's always going to be people first, and then everyone's scared of Skynet, everyone's seeing Terminator, everyone's seeing iRobot, and that's what's on everyone's mind. Because when ChatGPT first came out, you just see the plethora of YouTube videos about fear, 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 fear. Where are you going to work? Who's going to take your job, etc. But the truth is, we've been having this same level of fear since the 1800s. I think when they first, the technology of the day was the horse now moving all the loads instead of people carrying it by hand. And I forgot what's that little machine where you spin, and I think it's like a cloth machine or something like that.
Oh, the
And I
weaver,
forgot
the
what it's
weaving thing, because
the weaver.
one
Yeah,
person
yeah, yeah.
the blanket in the time it would take five, right?
Exactly. Yep. So the people who were doing it by hand, they started going smashing it, right? Because they saw their job and their opportunity going by the wayside. But the truth is, what ended up happening was people started adopting it and started increasing their productivity. They started giving the people what they wanted, started doing things better and faster. And at this point, I think that's where we're going to be at. We're going to pretty much, as everyone's calling now, make AI our co-pilot. There's going to be our co-pilot for pretty much everything we do today. I've seen a demonstration the other day with Microsoft. They're integrating their Copilot into the Microsoft suite of applications. So I had them. They
Yep.
typed in a demonstration on PowerPoint. Give me a PowerPoint about I forgot what it was about. It's like a presentation about, I guess, in speech for a graduation with Maria as the name and the children of this. Make it in a very passive, I guess like exciting tone or whatever. And so they create the PowerPoint created every slide. It created all the images. It created the fonts. It was like 10 slides, scripts, everything, just by typing it into a prompt. So it's not going away. And it's definitely going to make everything a lot easier. I mean, who really likes making PowerPoints? Like, I hate any type of assignment I have to do when you have to do a PowerPoint. It takes forever to really think about the ideas with it. And all you want to care about is the meat and potatoes, and the niceness is what keeps people engaged. But again, back to the policy, because of all this productivity that's going to go on, that's going to be the pushback of slowing down this technology. Because I think we also know, even like when it came to crypto, when the first crypto first came out, a lot of policy were like, let's understand this because we don't want to get behind in the technology realm. Because one thing we do know is you get behind the technology realm, you're going to get behind in everything else. And especially in the United States, we're trying to maintain that world dominance. So it's going to be very tricky. I think if it comes to jobs, it's going to slow it down. Maybe like, oh, maybe the company has to pay a fine or some type of. I don't know, but I don't think the United States at least is going to pause it or stop it because we have to maintain that advantage. That's a long-winded answer, but
Yeah.
go ahead,
So
Jason.
yeah, good long answer too. I was gonna say this week actually, I think it was yesterday or last Friday, Congress actually had a hearing on AI, and they're trying to think of what they're going to do in terms of policy because they are getting worried about this, right? But as Jamario said, right, it's being thrown in everything. If you go in Excel, right, Microsoft Excel, I was doing some stuff in spreadsheets the other day, and the old have to actually create this big, long, complex formula to do what I want. Now I just hit a button and say, go ahead and create this, blah, 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 and it creates all the formulas for you, does analysis, and gives you the answer. So it's a really helpful tool. How it's going to affect policy, I think, is going to be company by company, country by country, and state by state as you look at this. I know one of the biggest things people are worried about is the privacy concerns around it because it is really smart and can get into a lot of people's information. We use AI a lot in our company, specifically to help with course creation, course quality checking. We help it to give us ideas when we're trying to think of something. So if you've ever sat down and tried to write 500 security plus questions, it's really, really hard, right? Even just thinking up new names and new scenarios to use. So I can say, ChatGPT, give me 5 questions based on a scenario for this topic, and then I can choose from those, edit those, modify those, and I use it more as the starting point then this is the final product I'm going to turn into my boss. And what everybody's worried about is, kids are going, they get a prompt from school, they type the prompt in, they take the thing and they turn it in and say it's theirs. That's not what it's supposed to be for. It's supposed to be a first draft. It's supposed to be a helper. It's a co-pilot, as he said, right? An assistant. And I think if we use it in that way, we get a lot of benefit. It is going to affect policies. Just like we can use anything for good, we can use for bad, right? I use ChatGPT all the time for good stuff. I use Bard all the time for good stuff. But you can also make it do some bad things. Like when ChatGPT first came out, I told it, I want you to act like a penetration tester. I want you to write me a keylogger and obfuscate the code. And it created a block of Python code that I could use and put on another system to gain access and be a keylogger on their system. They've now put in blocks to prevent that, but there are ways to do this stuff still. And so policy is important, and I think it's going to be important, especially around the terms of copyright and who owns the material that's being generated, as well as what things can you do, what can't you do, how should you use it in your business, and what is going to be legally and appropriate and acceptable. So it's too early, and I'm not a futurist, so I don't know the answer, but I do expect that AI will affect policies for sure. How, I'm not exactly sure yet. That's really going to depend on how all the countries get together and decide to do it. And maybe this is something where like the UN has to chime in, just like international drilling rights in the ocean. No country owns that part. Well, nobody really owns cyberspace, right? And the internet. So maybe we all have to get together, and that makes it a 20-year decision to make that happen. We start trying to get 180 plus countries around the world to agree on something. So I don't think we're going to get anything quickly. I think it's going to be whatever that word is, hodgepodge and piecemeal. I don't think we're going to get a global solution. And so it's going to be per country, where you work, where you operate, where you use the internet, and that'll all affect it as well. Next question. All right. Good question, John. Thanks.
I
All
love
right.
AI.
This question is from an anonymous person. I think it came from LinkedIn, and it said, I have worked in help desk for 2 years, and I'm looking for a new job, but I'm not getting any responses because I'm an international student. And they actually wrote a little bit more in the actual chat that I was able to read. It said, I think that they have a work visa, but only because they're currently an international student. And a lot of companies are reluctant to hire them because they're in this kind of limbo status because they have a work visa while they're in school. But if they get out of school, they're no longer going to have their work visa. And that gets a little more challenging. I will tell you, I'm not an international lawyer or immigration lawyer. I have a couple of people on my team, and I've dipped my toe into it a little bit because I do have a lot of international folks who work for me, but they work for me from their own countries, not here in the US. We do have one employee who's overseas that is looking to come to the US, and we've been dipping our toe in trying to figure out how to make that happen. And I will tell you, even for to come visit us for a 2-week small sprint of a development project, it's taken us 2 or 3 months to get the approvals from their country, our country, and all the flights and everything booked in between, and all the visas that need to happen. So it's a complex thing, and it does make things harder. And going back to Donald's earlier question on hey, how do we get internships and things like that? One of the things that companies are doing is going, what's the easy button? And the easy button is hire locally, hire in the US, as opposed to bringing somebody in from an international student, which does make it a little bit more challenging. And you didn't say in your post if you were in America or in another country, but I'm just speaking from an American perspective when it comes to immigration. Immigration in the US is hard, time consuming, and it takes a while. So a lot of companies are reluctant to do it. And as an employer, when I want to bring somebody in, for instance, one of the person I'm talking about, he lives in India. And for me to be able to hire him and bring him in here and say, I want to bring him in for 5 years and have him work out of Florida, I have to show the federal government that I already put out that job for him across America too. And I had to try to hire an American, and that I couldn't find an American at the same pay, at the same quality, with the same skills to be able to bring him in under one of those like H1 visas or B2 visas or B1 visas, whatever it is. Again, I'm not an immigration lawyer, but it is challenging and it is difficult. And in his case, we are being able to make that case because he's done so much of the development over the last 2 years for us that nobody else could come in and pick up where he was without 6 months of digging through his code and trying to understand it. And so we are making that case, trying to get approval. So all that being said, it's challenging, right? It is harder than if you're trying to apply in your own area. I can tell you, even as an employer, when I hired Jamario, he's in California, I'm in Florida. So we had to register with the state of California before we could start paying him. And that was a 3-week process. And every employee that we hire from outside of Florida is another 2, 3, 4 weeks of paperwork to get it done. And that's just American hiring an American, but they're across state lines. And if I want to hire outside the US, it makes it even harder. So, it is a challenge, just to say it is a challenge. And I think you're going to have a lot of difficulty, especially with smaller companies. Your best bet is going to be applying at bigger companies because they have the time, money, and resources to bring in people from overseas. I'm about Microsoft, for instance, their CEO. He was an Indian man who was brought over right after college to work for Microsoft on one of those visas, and he worked his way up, and now he's the CEO of the company after 20 or 30 years. So they, especially on the West Coast, there's a big population of Chinese, Indian, and other Asian and Near East Asian countries that they bring in all the time, and they're used to that. When you start dealing with companies out of Florida or Kansas or Oklahoma, we're not as used to doing that. And so it's harder, and there's going to be a lot less chance. So I don't have a good solution for you because I haven't done a lot of international stuff in the past, except to say that it is going to be harder for you than somebody who is an American applying for an American job. And Jamario, I'm guessing you have nothing to add to that because you've never done international hiring. So we'll go to the next question. All right. This question says, another anonymous LinkedIn user. I'm transitioning from engineering to cybersecurity, and I just completed a cybersecurity certificate and pursuing Security Plus. Do you have any advice for pursuing a job in pen testing from this point? So you're going from engineering, and I'm assuming you mean traditional engineering, not computer engineering, but maybe you mean computer or network engineering. So if you are, that means you probably have a couple of years of experience already that you're going to be able to leverage in your resumes to help you get into cybersecurity. If not, then I want you to really focus on your transferable skills. So even if you're doing, I don't know, engineering to build bridges, there's stuff that you're doing there that relates to cyber. And if you can identify those things in your resume and highlight those, that will help you get there. The Security Plus is going to help you because it's going to match keywords on the job postings that you're going after. So you want to get that into your resume once you get certified. And that cybersecurity certificate will also help with that. As far as getting a job in pen testing, as I said earlier, when it comes to pen testing, there's one pen testing job for every 5 defense jobs. So if you're trying to break into cybersecurity for your first thing, I would go defense first. Go get a job as a SOC analyst. There's a lot of companies that are hiring for SOC analysts. Most of them are 24-hour positions. So they will hire A shift, B, C shift, which is like 8 to 4, 4 in the afternoon till midnight till 8 in the morning, and then 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. They do this round the clock schedule, and they usually do that with 5 teams, and they'll kind of rotate you through. It kind of sucks doing rotating shift work, but if you take a job like that for a year, you'll get the experience, and you'll take the job that somebody else isn't willing to because of those weird hours. You'll be able to break in, get that experience, and then go work a normal 9 to 5 job or a consulting job or move into pen testing or something like that. So that's where I would look. And for all those who are looking for that, entry-level cybersecurity job, be willing to go in person, be willing to work weird hours like night shifts, because nobody applies for the midnight to 8 a.m. shift. I will tell you this, like it's really, really hard to fill as a boss, but we need it, right? And so if you're willing to do that for 6 months or a year, we'll bring you in, let you do that for 6 months, then move you to day shift, and then you can move from there to whatever position you want. And those kind of things will be a great way to get yourself in by doing the jobs nobody else wants to do. Jamar, anything to add on that?
Yep, I was going to add the HackerOne website again. That's I'll keep speaking of that. I'm pretty sure there's other bug bounty programs, but that seemed to be the most popular. That's the one I've signed up for, and I think it's very important to get that experience, right? Because there's nothing that a simulation can really do that real life. They can really simulate real life, right? Because there's so many other factors you have to think about. You have to think about different, because technology is always changing. So every time we come up, even with our courses, right? They're always, slightly behind to a certain degree because they're based off of the certification that's come out, which takes 3 years, but tomorrow there's a new update to this software, right? So you really need to get into the trenches. And when it comes to penetration testing, there's a lot of legal things you have to think about. There's so many different, like for example, you have to think about the different vendors you're going through, maybe like AT&T or Verizon. You have to notify these different people. There's a lot of prep for penetration testing as well. And I think once you kind of get into these bug bounty programs and getting that experience, because again, I believe, and Jason will probably attest, experience trumps all. Even if you're in the interview, if you can show, hey, look, I have a bug bounty. I've been rewarded money for this particular report. I found this for this company. I think that's going to go far. You can demonstrate your skills versus, hey, I got pen test plus, etc. That's just another plug for Hacker.
Yeah, I think it's a great suggestion. If you want to do pen testing, there is nothing that stops you from signing up with HackerOne or any of the other bug bounty websites and start doing those. And if you don't find anything, you don't find anything. But if you do find something, put that on your resume. Found exploit in Facebook, reported through HackerOne, won $5,000 bonus, bug bunny bonus or something like that. And that will get employers' attentions really quickly when you start going, hey, I've been doing CTFs. I came in first place. Hey, I found 5 exploitable bugs and got paid for them. That will start getting them to go, you know what? Even though you only have certs, you obviously have the experience. If you're finding this stuff, I'll give you a chance and bring you on. And so that's another way to stand out, in addition to things like internships. Next question. All right. Next question says, from C. Burgess says, can this be used on a mobile device? I'm assuming you're talking about the demo that we did earlier with Kali Linux. And is yes, but it's a little bit more hard. It's a little more difficult, right? So, if you're on an Apple device like I am, I'm an iPhone guy. No, the answer is no, you can't. Apple will not let you install Kali Linux on there. But I will tell you that I have an old Android that I bought that is not tied to a cell plan or anything like that. And I have wiped that device, and it's an ARM-based processor. And I was able to install Kali Linux on it using the mobile version. They have one called NetHunter, which is their mobile version of Kali Linux. And I use that with a little external Bluetooth keyboard and mouse. And literally I can go in a coffee shop with my little phone there and start doing my hacks from there. And you'd never know because I'm just playing on my phone, right? You can do the same thing on a tablet size if you have an Android. Or I used to have a little netbook, which was like a little 8-inch laptop that would fold open. I don't think they even make those anymore, but they used to have them. It was called Acer One. It was made by Acer. And I had Kali Linux on that, and I would use that for penetration tests as well because it was really small. It was about that big. It was like an 8-inch little laptop that would just fold open like a clamshell. So there are some out there you can use. And then there's other things you can find out there as well, like Rubber Ducky. There's one that's called the Dolphin, which is a wireless attack device. Those actually downstairs. Unfortunately, it's downstairs, so I can't get it to you, but it's literally about this big. And I can use that to copy key fobs for cars, RFID tags for entry badges, garage doors. So if I go by Jamario's house when he's opening his garage door, I can capture that signal, come back 3 hours later and open his garage or shut his garage, all those kind of things. And it's called the Dolphin. There's another one called the Rubber Ducky. There's lots of these things out there, and a lot of hackers will make their own tools that are convenient to take with them, and a lot of them are mobile. All right, next question. Here we go. All right, looks like Barzan. I have Security Plus and CISA Plus. I want to become a security architect. What search should I go after now that I have Security Plus and CISA Plus? And their company uses Azure. What are your recommendations there, Jamario?
I would think you need to get into the Azure space when it comes to architecture, because the truth is everything's moving to the cloud anyway. Most people aren't being traditional when it comes to these new security architects. Everything is cloud-based. It's more efficient, and that's just where everything's going. So I would get into, I don't even know, do you know the names of the Azure certifications off the top of your head?
So I can't remember all the numbers off the top of my head, but if you go to getcloudskills.com, I think is the website. It's Scott Duffy's website, or go on YouTube and type in Scott Duffy. You'll see every Azure certification there is. There are ones for cryptography. There's ones for Active Directory. There's ones for the overview of the cloud. There's ones for security architecture and things like that. The security one, if I remember correctly, is AZ500, I think. If Scott's on watching, throw it in chat and let me know if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not an Azure expert, but I believe that's what it is. I think it's AZ500, which would be a good one. There is a security architect one for Azure. And if this is going to be your first Azure cert, I would probably start a little lower, like AZ900, which is their intro to Azure, unless you're already comfortable with Azure, and then going into AZ, I think it's 500 for security architecture. That would be a good thing. And then on the vendor neutral side, the other one I would recommend would be CASP, which is CAS Plus. You have your Security Plus, you have your CISA Plus, which means every 3 years you need to renew those two. If you get your CAS Plus, it will automatically renew those for you. And that is the top level technical security engineer, security architect type certification. And in that course, one of the domains is security architecture. We have security architecture, security engineering, security operations, and GRC are the 4 domains. And so if you go through that course, you'll get a really good in-depth understanding of security architecture, and that will help you as well as you go forward. And it renews your other CompTIA certifications. So when it comes time for your renewal, that's what I would do. Instead of going and retaking CISA, I would go get your CAS Plus. All right, next question. All right. Easy Fun Money. I like that name. Easy Fun Money asks.
Easy Fun Money.
I just passed Pen Test Plus a few weeks ago. Thank you. What are some good conferences to attend to learn and network in person? Yeah. I'll let Jamario go first so I don't steal all the easy ones, and then I'll pick in some extras after that.
Oh, no. I think you should take this because I've actually haven't been to any of the specific conferences, and I know you speak at them. So you have this one. You have the
Yes.
floor is yours.
All right.
Yep.
I'll just take it again. Sorry, you don't get it.
It's all
Oh,
career questions. You're the career guy.
that's totally okay. And I was just corrected by my CTO when I said the Dolphin. It's not the Dolphin. The technical name is Flipper Zero. That's the little mobile Wi-Fi and RFID and NFC hacking device. Like I said, I have it downstairs. It looks like a dolphin. That's why I said dolphin, but it's Flipper Zero because Flipper is a dolphin. So anyway, if you're looking for that, you can Google Flipper Zero and find that out. Anyway, going back to the question. Easy Fun Money asked Pentest Plus a few weeks ago. Thank you. What are some good conferences to attend to learn in person? So I don't know where you are in the world, but depending on where you are in the world, this will change the answer. So one of the most common and well-known ones out there is Black Hat. You've probably heard of that one before. Black Hat has 3 conferences per year, one in Europe that they usually hold out in London or France, one over in Asia, which is usually in Singapore, South Korea, or Japan, and one in the US, which is always held in Las Vegas. And it's usually the first or second week of August. So if you want to go out there, you can do that. I will tell you, Black Hat has gotten a lot more corporate over the years, and it's gotten really expensive. I went out there in 2019 for Black Hat. I haven't gone back since COVID, but when I was out there, it cost me, I think, $3,000 or $4,000 for the week to go to the conference. And I took a 2-day malware analysis course while I was there, and that was another $3,800. So for a 2-day course, it was $3,800. A 4-day course is like $6,000. Very expensive. And so most people don't go to Black Hat unless their company is paying for it. And in my case, my company paid for it. Dion Trading paid for it, right? So I was able to go. Another one you can do, which is also, if you look at Black Hat states, this one always happens the 3 days after Black Hat, and it's still in Vegas. And this one is DEF CON. And if you want a good time, go to DEF CON. DEF CON is awesome. That's where the real hackers are going to be. Black Hat is where the security professionals are who work for corporations. Black Hat is some of those. There's some FBI there as well. And then there's a lot of hackers and illegal hackers out there as well. And you will learn some really cool stuff there. It's really inexpensive. It is in Vegas, so you have to get out to Vegas. But the cost to attend is only about $300. And they only accept cash because they're paranoid and they don't want credit cards and they don't want tracing people. So everything is kind of anonymous there. You can, as upfront or as hidden as you want to be. But it is all cash to go in there. And usually it's at 2 or 3 hotels in Vegas that they take over all the conference rooms, and it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. And I did that last in 2019. I'm planning on trying to go again this year if I can get out there. I have another conflict that week, so I'm trying to move things around. Another one that's a really corporate one is RSA. RSA is the people who made the RSA algorithm that we use for digital signatures, and they have a security conference in San Francisco every year that a lot of the big companies go to. So if you want to, try to make networking impressions to be able to get a job, that's a good one to check out. And then another one that's really good is one that's done in a lot of different cities around the world. It's called B-Sides, letter B-SIDE. B-Sides. And there's B-Sides New York, B-Sides Baltimore, B-Sides Orlando, B-Sides Las Vegas, etc., all over the country here in the US. And those are like super cheap, like $20 to $40 a day to go to. They're super cheap. They're usually on a weekend. It's usually like a Saturday and Sunday. Not nearly as big as DEF CON, Black Hat, or RSA, but really good stuff and local. The other last one I would mention that I think is worth a mention is John Strand's conference from Black Hill Security, and it's called the Wild West Hack Fest, something like that. If you just search Wild West hacking, you'll find it. But he usually has that once a year. It's either 1 year is San Diego, 1 year is North Dakota, or they do both each year. I can't remember which. But my buddy Kip goes to that every year. I haven't gone to that yet. I am planning on going this year. So you'll probably see me out in Deadwood, which is Deadwood, North Carolina is where they do it, which is where Black Hill Security is based. And it's really weird because you have all these people fly into Deadwood, which there's no airport there. So it's an hour away, and then they all take a bus over. And it's supposed to be a really cool event. Kip's gone for years and speaks really highly of it. And there's a lot of good networking and handshaking opportunities there. So those would be kind of the first 4 or 5 that I would think of: Black Hat, DEF CON, B-Sides, RSA, and Wild West Hacking Fest. Those would be the 5 I would first. And there's a lot of other ones. Those are kind of the 5 big ones that I think of.
All right. It's in Deadwood, South Dakota?
It's North Dakota or South Dakota. I can't remember which one, but it's Deadwood. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, Deadwood. Yeah, I used to go there and gamble all the time at the casino. I didn't know that. I was stationed in South Dakota for years. So.
Yep, back when you were in the Air Force. All right. Next question. Let's see. I'm going to try to pronounce, and I'm probably going to screw it up, so I apologize. But I think it's Malachi. Malachi Music says, I'm a music teacher who's looking to transition into cybersecurity, specifically pen testing. I'm using your CompTIA Security Plus guide, but what else do I need to do to be a qualified applicant for hire? So the biggest struggle with pen testing, as I said before, is there's just not a lot of entry-level jobs. So to be hireable as a pen tester, you need experience pen testing. And the way you can get that is through capture the flag competitions, working as an intern, or doing things like bug bounties, where you can actually make money if you find things. But again, unless you're really good at your skills, you're not going to be able to do that third one because it does take understanding of programming and things like that. So, I would say, you may want to look at going defense first and then going to offense. And what I mean by that is doing cybersecurity analyst, as we talked about earlier, versus pen test plus first. And so if you do that, you'll be able to get in, get experience, and then move up into pen testing. And it's not to say that pen testing is above cybersecurity analysts. They're actually side by side in the hierarchy, but there's just, one pen test job for every 5 or 4 SOC analyst jobs. And so, for me, if I'm trying to get in someplace, I'm going to go where there's more opportunity, and then I can move over to the harder thing later. So that would be my recommendation. And then the other thing I would say is once you're done with Security Plus, in Security Plus, you're getting introduced to a lot of the tools like Nmap and Metasploit and all that. Feel free to play with those, get used to them. And then I would go to CISA or Pentest, and CISA is defense, Pentest is attack. And once you get one of those, you'll be ready to move into one of those attack or defend jobs. All right. And next one. Let's see. Jerome says, what is the best online course and what is the best certification for pen testing to be in the red team later? I'll let Jamario do this first. And I know this is probably going to end up sounding like a shameless plug. So go ahead, Jamario.
Of course, Dion training. We have plenty of courses, of course. Penetration, Pen Test Plus is, I think that's our go-to for penetration testing. I'm not sure if it's necessarily going to make you the leader having that certification, but of course, Pen Test Plus, Dion training for sure.
Yeah, so
Jason, take it away.
So if you go to diontraining.com/courses, you'll see our Pentest Plus course. And if you don't have Pentest Plus yet, I would start there. I will tell you, it's not going to be the end-all be-all course for you. It's going to get you through the certification. It's going to introduce you to a ton of tools, just like the stuff we talked about earlier today. We showed you Nmap. We showed you Metasploit. We'll go through all that in the course. We'll show you how to do SQL injections, XML injections, password cracking, all that stuff. And we do all these demos. But it is a certification course, not a hands-on training course, to be a hands-on penetration tester. So I do want to make that distinction. But it is important you go through that course first so you understand all the concepts and all the technology, and then you can dive deep. And because of this, this is something I haven't told everybody yet, but we actually just hired 2 new instructors on staff. And one of them, Sean, is currently building a Mastering Nmap class. And that will be coming out later this summer. That class will be 4 to 8 hours worth of us doing nothing but teaching you how to hack using Metasploit. So that tool we showed you earlier that Mario was just showing you, after we did Nmap, we went in and started doing the attack. We're going to teach you everything in that tool. So you say, how do I do the keyloggers? How do I take screenshots? How do I turn on the webcam? How do I record the person? How do I, break in and change their password? All of that will be taught in that course. So I would keep an eye out for that one. It's called Mastering Nmap, and it'll be coming out, I think, in July or August. The other one that we're doing is another hands-on course that is Mastering Nmap, which was the first half of what we showed you today, which is how you do the defensive scans to figure out what is out there and what vulnerabilities exist. And I have another instructor named Jeremy who's building that with me right now, and that one should be coming out in June or July. Both of those are being built as very, very hands-on courses. We're even going to show you how to build your own lab in those courses so you have machines to attack and defend against, and then use those in those courses. So those, my first 3 suggestions is our own stuff. Now I'm going to unplug myself for a second and tell you other things of other people that I really respect and that you should check out. Black Hat Information Security, which is owned by John Strand. He has another company, which is called Anti-Siphon Training. And I feel really bad for Christina because she's now got to figure out how to spell anti-siphon training and putting it in the notes. I think it is ATISYPHON training.com, but she'll Google that and put it in there and verify before she puts it in the chat for us. But the great thing about them is they have a lot of hands-on courses. They do them as live courses over Zoom or something like Zoom. You'll sign up and it's a pay what you can model. So you can pay anything from $5 to $500. And generally when they do that, they have 500 or 1,000 students joining these courses. And the great thing about anti-siphon training, it is all hands-on. They have a course on like how to be an attacker, how to be a defender, how to be, it's the top one there on the left side. That's the link, antisiphotraining.com. So they have how to be a defender, how to be an attacker, how to do this, how to do that. They've got 30 or 40 different courses. They run them, different ones every month. Definitely check out anti-siphon training. They are really, really good. And like I said, very low cost as well, which is one of the things I always look for my students is there's some great stuff out there, but I've seen some stuff like SANS, right? And they're $8,000 a course. Who's going to be able to pay $8,000 for a 1 week course, right? Most of us can't, especially if we're looking for a job. So while they have great training, I don't recommend SANS just because of the cost. But anti-siphon is very low cost, so it's a great one to check out. And then the other one I'd check out is if you really want to get really good on hands-on stuff is stationx.net. This is owned by Nathan House. He's a Udemy instructor that went off and started his own thing. And at stationx.net, he has a membership. I think it's like $150 a year, and you get access to all of his content, including he has a full-on Nmap course, a full-on Metasploit course, a full-on SQL injection course, full-on Wireshark course. He's got tons of courses because all they do there is pen testing and cyber defense. So definitely check them out as well. It's another one that I highly recommend. And even some of my courses are in his subscription to some of my older courses. So so stationx.net, and Christina will also put that into the chat for us. All right.
I got a question for you.
Anything to add on that, Mario, while she does that?
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you think about, because I remember when I first wanted to get into penetration testing, I haven't looked at it in a while since, but the OSCP certification, what do you think about that one? The one with the 24-hour live hack at the end, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So OSCP is another great one. It's a certification, and it is you usually buy 3 months of access to the lab, and then you got 24 hours to do the certification. And your job is to hack in as much as you can, find the flags, and write up a report at the end. Very, very difficult certification. If you can pass it, it means you actually can hack. And so that will also get the attention of a lot of people. But if you just have that certification, you're still not going to get the attention of people, because most of the time when you look at job listings, they're asking for Pentest Plus, CEH. They don't think to ask for OSCP, even though OSCP is good, because HR folks don't always know what they're asking for. The hiring manager will know, but the HR folks won't. All right. That was all the questions? I think you have one more pinned, unless I'm missing it.
No, that's just the one we just did.
That was just the one we just did. Well, never mind. Okay. Well, in that case, we are all out of questions. Unless anybody else has any last questions, we'll go ahead and get wrapped up here. I don't see any more questions popping in. So that being said, I guess that'll be the end of our live stream. If you guys have any other questions, you can always hit us up at our LinkedIn, our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/group/DionTraining. In our Discord channel, which I believe you can find by going to discord.diontraining.com. And if that link doesn't work, just email support@diontraining.com. And Eduardo, who leads up our Discord channel, will make sure you get the invite and get you there. So that won't be a problem. And I did see one big post just popped in, so I'm going to see if I can read this off the screen and answer yours for you, Gary. Will that show on the screen, or is it too big?
It's way too big.
Okay, so I'm going to read it from the chat, and then we'll just answer from there. So Gary says, I'm trying to career change into tech without a tech degree nor tech experience, because he's worked in computers and assisted the IT department in companies he's worked in the past, but he hasn't worked in an actual tech position. Is he should be looking at? I've heard different things, but it seems like to break into tech, I would need to have a year or two of experience in IT or a 4-year tech degree over cert and vice versa, just to get the entry-level position. I'm confused. I really appreciate any advice you have, and then any advice you can share as well. So I'll let Jamario go first, and then I'll jump in from there. So if you have somebody who wants to move from a non-tech job into a tech job, they have no tech experience, no documented tech experience because they weren't in a tech position.
Okay.
How should they break in? Do they have to go get a 4-year degree? Do they have to get a bunch of certs, or what are some things they can do to try to get in?
At least, again, from my limited experience from hiring, I can just go over the interviews I've been through. And most of the times when it comes to like switching over, certs seem to hit a lot more than degrees. I'm going to go focus on that aspect of it, because at least from my opinion, certifications means you know the job. With the degree, it's like it kind of teaches you how to be a worker, right? Would you agree? It's like, okay, you can come show up, the standard, then you come show up 4 hours, for 4 years straight at 8 o'clock, leave at this time, and you get things done. I think degrees to a certain degree show more work ethic. So I have my degree in software development. And any degree or job position I've been in, even for software development, they never asked me about it. They were like, okay, check. What can you do? Right? It always going to get down to, because when you're hiring for a position, what can you do? Because at the end of the day, the job's purpose is to make money, right? So what position do they have? What exactly are they asking for? Because, they're going to give that long description of qualifications, desired qualifications as well. And I think depending on the type of companies, like you were saying, look at LinkedIn, look at Indeed, look at Glassdoor, all these different sites, and see exactly what they're looking for. Because they'll tell you if they're looking for a degree, they'll tell you if they're looking for a specific certification, they'll hit those markers, and really just kind of tailor your experience to those things. And again, it's hard, like you say, to get into entry level without the experience, without the internship. Because again, for me, I went to the military. They gave it to me. They forced me to get it. Not forced me, but it was kind of a decision of mine. But they forced me to get it, and it was great. So as far as more, again, career experience, Jason, you're the guy. You're the king on that particular answer. So I'll let you answer that.
I'm definitely not the king. I defer that honor to Kip Boyle, my
You're the
partner on the
king.
Your Cyber
You're
podcast,
the
but
king.
that's okay. And I'll preface this with saying my hiring experience was all in the government world and contract world. So I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with the
Mhm.
DoD, contracting and military, and how that works. My partner, Kip Boyle, on the Your Cyber Path podcast is much more adept on the commercial side. He was a military guy, but he hasn't done anything military in like 20 years. And so all his hiring has been in the commercial sector, financing, banking, insurance, sports teams, things like that. So, a lot of what I know is stuff I learned from him from doing the podcast for the last, 100 episodes with him. But I will tell you that, one of the people we interviewed recently, his name is Ed, and we've had him on the show 3 times now. The first time we had him on the show was probably about 6 months or a year ago, and he was somebody who I thought was really impressive because his degree was in music. And we talked earlier about somebody who had a music teaching music, and Ed went to Berkeley and got a music degree. Then he went and got a job fixing bicycles at a bicycle shop, and he decided he wanted to go into IT. And so he got a couple of certifications, and he went and got a job in IT. He moved from that job. When he got the job in IT, he did it in help desk and field services, where he would go out and fix people's computers at their desk. He got a job working for one of the DoD contractors in Hawaii. And so he was going from base to base and fixing things. While he was there, he used his soft skills and he made friends with the people who he was fixing computers. And one of those was somebody who was like, oh, we actually run the SOC here. Would you like a job in the SOC? And they brought him in and took a chance on him because they saw he had a little IT at this point and they liked him. Like, look, if you can get your Security Plus and you get your CISO, we'll give you a job, right? And so he did those things. They moved him in. And then we had him back on the podcast again. Now that he's moved into cybersecurity. About 6 months, 9 months later, he had another job offer that raised his pay like 25%. Because once you get that experience in, you start becoming really valuable and everybody wants you. So the hardest job is that first one. And the way he did it was he found a way in by being able to sorry, I got distracted by a chat on the screen. Sorry. But yeah, so the way he did it was through his being in the right place, making networks, and doing it the right way. And he started out in the bottom by being a field service person, which is one of the lower level jobs. Basically, you need an A+ to do that. It's hardware, software, that kind of thing. And then he used that to leverage into a different job. So what I would tell you, Gary, is just because you don't have experience doesn't mean you're not hireable, but you need to look at the experience you do have. And when you're writing your resume, highlight that experience. I had another student in my old hired program year, and she had a master's degree in marketing, and she had a lot of marketing experience, but she didn't have a lot of IT or cyber experience. She got a couple of key certifications like Security Plus, and then when we rewrote her resume with her, and we helped her with that as part of that program, we highlighted all the things she did and how they would relate to cyber. And because of that, she was able to get a job with a company. She applied to a place that does pen testing and cyber defense, and they go, look, you don't have enough experience to be a pen tester, but your marketing experience is actually pretty valuable to us. Let's hire you on. You'll become a strategic trainer to help people prevent themselves from getting hacked. And then while you're there, we'll also teach you this other stuff. And so the plan was over a year, she would get the experience and move over to the pen test side. So something like that can happen. A lot of it is how likable are you? How presentable are you? What experience do you have that you can leverage? And what can you do as far as transferable skills? And if you want to dig more into that, definitely check out the yourcyberpath.com website. Just search for the term transferable skills and you'll see our episodes on that. Or you can go into our our irresistible class on Udemy, which is Irresistible, How to Become Irresistible to Cybersecurity Hiring Managers. And in there, we talk about transferable skills, and we spend about 2 hours or so going through how to write your resume based on the skills you have and making sure that you're hitting the mark of what employers are asking for. So in your position, Gary, and also the music, Michaela, I think it was the music person earlier, I would look at both of those because you have skills, even though you're like, I don't have IT experience, you do. We just have to find those and highlight those to that audience. So that being said, I want to thank you all again for joining us. If you need any courses, you can always find us at diontraining.com. Diontraining.com has all of our stuff there. If you go to the courses tab, you'll see all of our courses that we have. If you go to the Udemy tab, you'll always get our lowest price on our Udemy courses. And if you go to the vouchers tab, you can buy your vouchers for 10% or more off and save money on all those certifications like Security Plus and CISA Plus and Pentest Plus and CAS Plus and all of those things. So any of the things you want to see, you can always find us at Dion Training on all of our social platforms. And we'll be here again next month with another great live stream. Next month, I think Reed is joining me again. I can't remember the topic, but it'll be awesome. I was wrong. It's going to be Jeremy, one of my new instructors. So I apologize.
Yeah,
So
Jeremy,
it's Jeremy, we're going to be talking about cloud stuff because Jeremy is my AWS instructor, and we're coming out with a new AWS Cloud Practitioner course this summer that he and I are working on right now. So you guys will all get to meet Jeremy next month, and you will love it. So definitely come check that out. We'll talk about the cloud for a bit, and then we'll take any of your questions. So that being said, I'll see you next time. Thanks all.
All right. See you guys.